Hey, how's it going? Jason here, and in this episode we're going to be working on this Semi-Cascade Juniper I have right behind me. Alright, so the difference between a regular Cascade and a Semi-Cascade is that you're going to have a branch coming up the middle here on the top, and that's going to serve as your apex over here, as opposed to when you have a regular Cascade, your apex is going to be on this side, and the majority of the branches, you won't have a branch coming up off the top of the tree or the trunk right here. The apex will be here and all the branches will sweep down this way. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start wiring from here. I always work from the bottom up, and then I'm going to wire this and start to layer the branches as I wire them. So when I work on this first branch, the first thing I'm going to wire are these primary branches here off the main trunk. And that way I can position these lower if I need to. And then after I wire the primary branch, I'll move on to the secondaries, still working on the same pad, and then move from there. Alright, so I just finished wiring this Semi-Cascade Juniper. Let's take a look at the pads, let's take a look at the branches to see what I did. So basically, as I was styling this tree, you know, since it's a Semi-Cascade, you have a branch coming up here that's going from the apex. So your apex is going to be right over here, right over the center branch. And then you're going to cascade the rest of the tree over here. When I was cascading the tree, what I was trying to do was I was trying to create pads and layers as I was going up. So as always, I always start from the bottom up, you know, bottom, and work myself all the way up to the apex. And so I developed some pads here. I created some pads here and just wired them, you know, and I always followed my triangles. And then I just went from this step to this layer, and up to this layer. And then when I got around here, I switched to this side a little bit just to see if I could balance this a little bit better, and then I did the apex all together. And then as I was wiring, when I got up to around here near the apex, you know, I didn't want to put a thick wire along this whole branch, so what I used was a little bit of guy wire, found a gin down here, and just anchored it to that gin, and I was able to bring this branch down to create a better crown at the top. And then after I finished wiring all the pads, I usually go in with my shears and I'll trim up, you know, some thicker growth. Say, you know, it was a little bit too heavy on this side with foliage. I went in there and thinned out a little bit. All the ones going down, I went in there, and if I didn't, you know, pinch them off, I just went them, you know, I went there and cut them with my shears, and I just went around the entire tree doing that. You know, and semi-cascades are one of my favorite styles of trees, at least in terms of styling a bonsai. You know, next time you've got a branch that's sort of coming down like this, you know, see if you can tip it to the side and see if you can use another branch on the top to serve as an apex, and then sort of start your semi-cascade that way. You know, don't always think of it immediately as you go drop this branch down and create a cascade. See if there's a branch that you can use as an apex, and then what you'll end up with is a little bit of a better crown and a little bit more of a fuller tree. And as I was styling this tree, you know, I always followed, you know, my general sort of guidelines when I design a tree is I always follow my triangles. I've got one here, I've got one in the entirety of the tree, and then if I swivel over here to the side, I still follow the triangles there, and then within the pad itself, I always have my triangles as well. So if you're laying out your pads, you know, that's a simple guideline to go by. You know, if you're stuck and, you know, why does it not look kind of, you know, balanced or so, you just kind of go with the triangles. And as you're arranging your pads, you know, make sure to save some branches to go across the top of it, you know, so you don't end up with fishbone, so you don't end up with something that looks just like this. Make sure you lay some branches across the top. You'll notice that that's what I did, because eventually those branches right there will develop further, and those are what, you know, those are the branches that, and the foliage that's going to create, you know, sort of a fullness right here. And that fullness will just continue, you know, once I let this grow, this will develop here, and then I can just prune that back. I'll develop here, develop here, develop here, and then eventually all the pad layers will be full foliage. Right now it's a little bit empty right there. So hopefully you guys liked how this semi-cascade turned out on this juniper. For my next video, I'll probably do another technique video on creating a, you know, simple gin, because I've got a lot of questions regarding that. But if you've got any other questions, just leave them in the comments below. And then as always, thanks for watching.